This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, as Congress continues to shape an immigration reform bill that could provide a path to citizenship for some 11 million undocumented residents, we look now at the plight of those who rarely come up in this discussion. Migrants from Central and South America who travel through Mexico en route to the United States. Many of them are fleeing violence and poverty in their countries only to face robberies, beatings, and kidnappings by smugglers who hold them for ransom. Human rights groups estimate at least 20,000 Central and South Americans were kidnapped in Mexico just last year. That's more than 50 people a day. Many do not survive, and hundreds have been found in mass graves throughout the country. This is a clip from a short film directed by Mark Silver and the Mexican film star Gael Garcia Bernal for Amnesty International. It's narrated by Garcia Bernal. It's called The Invisibles. It begins with the voice of a migrant injured in a fall from a train, which many migrants ride in order to travel north.
Hello, ¿quién habla? Juanita.
Who's speaking? Juanita? I'm not well, my child. I've been in the hospital for 3 days, but don't tell Mom. I'm here in Mexico. The problem is that they were about to attack me on the train, and they pushed me off, and now I am here in the hospital. Thank God I survived, because I was left alone on the train tracks. They're going to amputate 2 of my fingers, and I have a fractured wrist, but thanks to God, that's all.
He said, "Kill me, let me bleed to death." In the hospital, they gave him a bucket to put his legs in, while the blood drained from his body. "No, you'll bleed to death." I picked him up, and he said, "Leave me to bleed, leave me to die." "No," I said, "you have a mother, you have children. I don't know who else you have, but you must fight for them." They need my tears, they need my care. I tell them not to worry. I tell them they're not alone anymore. I admire these people so much. What courage, what strength of will they have to survive, despite such terrible injuries.
Olga Sanchez Martinez set up the Albergue de Jesus, El Buen Pastor, where she provides shelter for migrants, the elderly and poor, no matter what their nationality or social status. Without people like Olga or Father Alejandro Solalinda and the volunteers working with them, these migrants would have no chance of protection at all.
They're going to kidnap you. What will you do? And one of them says to me, "We're going with God's help. God is with us." Yes, but even with God's help, they'll kidnap you. What are you going to do? One of them answered, "We'll carry on anyway." Migrants are not a threat, they're an opportunity. They come with strong values and many wonderful things. I think this world will soon tire of materialism and consumerism. It will tire of power and money. Poor people are the spiritual reserve of the world.
That last voice you heard was Father Alejandro Solalinde from the short film called The Invisibles, directed by Mark Silver and Gael Garcia Bernal. Well, Father Alejandro Solalinde joins us in our New York studio before heading home to Mexico today. He's a Catholic priest on a caravan of hope across the United States to draw attention to the plight of Central American migrants traveling here through Mexico, who are often deported into dangerous conditions. Founder and director of the Brothers in the Road, Hermanos en el Camino, a shelter for migrants in the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca, and received the 2012 National Human Rights Award from Mexico's President Enrique Neto for his work. We're also joined by Marco Castillo, organizer with Migrant Families Popular Assembly. Father Solalinde, I thank you so much for being with us. Why have you come to this country? Why the Caravan of Hope?
Nosotros pensamos que la migración es una cuestión regional, Centroamérica, México, Estados Unidos y Canadá. Para tomar la decisión de la reforma migratoria, no puede ser que nada más tengamos la visión del sur, del norte. Por eso la caravana quiere compartir la visión del sur.
We think that the immigration matter is a regional matter, so Central America, Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And we believe that immigration reform is a vision of North America, and so we are here in the Caravan for Hope because we believe it should be the whole region.
And this whole issue of what happens to Central Americans, specifically in Mexico, how big of an issue is that in Mexico? It's never discussed here in the United States.
La situación es muy difícil en Centroamérica y en México. En Centroamérica y México faltan trabajo, hay muchos pobres, como aquí también. Y se necesita que se creen condiciones favorables para una vida digna en sus lugares de origen, para que ellos no tengan que salir.
And the situation is a bit different in Mexico and Central America, and it is that people are looking for work and people are poor, just like they are here, and they're looking for better conditions so that they can live in a dignified way.
But what is the government in Mexico doing to attempt to prevent these kinds of assaults and attacks and kidnappings?
Para el gobierno de México no es una prioridad el tema migratorio. Tampoco lo es al interior los derechos humanos, aunque al exterior sí lo sea.
And for the government of Mexico, migration issues are not a priority, nor is it human rights issues internally in the country.
Can I ask you about San Fernando, the mass graves there? Tell us where it is. What are these graves?
Desgraciadamente, en San Fernando no se han encontrado realmente culpables, no se ha hecho justicia como debiera ser. Fue un acto criminal que quedó impune, pero desgraciadamente ha habido otros San Fernandos.
So, unfortunately, San Fernando is a place where we have not found the guilties. It's a place where there's no justice, and there are other San Fernandos as well.
Where is San Fernando? Who is buried there?
Everywhere.
En todas partes, everywhere.
I'd like to ask Marco Castillo, you've been organizing here. What is the impact of potential immigration reform going to be in terms of here in the United States on especially the Central Americans who are coming across Mexico?
Well, we welcome any effort that any government will offer around migration. Unfortunately, we see this as an opportunity. Governments are seeing this, and more than anything, the Congress is seeing this as an opportunity to bring the issue of national security. And what we're bringing what we're trying to say with this caravan is that we don't need any more national security perspective. What we need is to bring the human rights and the human being back to the center of human mobility in the region.
And can you talk about the significance of this caravan of hope for the organizing you're doing around immigration, and tell us your own story?
Of course. Well, this caravan, it's a great opportunity to bring unity between Mexico and the U.S. We want to see ourselves as one population that are suffering the consequences of a national security perspective that has affected all of our dignity and human rights. My personal story, me as thousands of others, are a migrant myself who has traveled to this country, in my case specifically, to bring the word and to bring organizing efforts for both countries.
Father Solalinda, there have been numerous threats against your own life. What kind of personal danger have you had to confront in advocating for migrants in Mexico?
Principalmente la delincuencia organizada, pero también dentro de ese concepto están funcionarios públicos, servidores públicos corruptos, policías, que los mismos crímenes, los mismos cárteles han reclutado y están en su nómina.
So mainly delinquent organized crime, and in that also public officials and police officials are part of that, and in that as well is the crime of the cartels in the region.
Pero principalmente hay dos cosas, son las desapariciones que no paran. Sí, hay más de 10,000 migrantes desaparecidos, pero también hay secuestros que no han parado.
And inside of that, there's two things that are really important. 10,000 people who have been disappeared, and kidnappings.
And how are most of these kidnappings resolved? The families back in Central America end up paying monies to the kidnappers to free their relatives?
La gente que pasa es pobre, pero los que son secuestrados piden a su familia aquí en Estados Unidos o amigos que les presten dinero. Le pagan al crimen organizado por los secuestros y luego ellos cuando vengan a trabajar, si es que llegan, tienen que pagar todo eso a través de un año o más de trabajo.
So most of the people that pass here are poor people, and the criminals ask the families in the United States to pay money, and so then the people get lended that money, and once they come to the U.S., they now have to pay that money over a period of a year or so while they work.
Can you tell us about the guns that come into Mexico from the United States?
Nosotros llegamos el día 30, empezamos la caravana. Y estamos prácticamente al día 24 y estamos llevando precisamente una experiencia desde los migrantes que directamente, como ya dijo Marcos, hablen directamente y digan sus experiencias. Mi experiencia personal es que yo he aprendido mucho en esta caravana.
So we have been here for about 30 days, 24 days of the 30 days of the caravan, and my experience is that people need to speak up their own experience, and that's what Marcos spoke about, people speaking up about their own experience.
I wanted to ask you about the change of government in Mexico. The new president in Mexico has tried to not have as much emphasis on the war on drugs as his predecessor did. How is the new government, do you see the policies it's implementing, hoping to change this current situation with the migrants?
Bueno, es curioso que este gobierno, al entrar, haya pensado que en los 6 meses que lleva, 5 meses, vaya a cambiar el mundo. Él nos ha dado a entender que por el simple hecho de cambiar de color, ya todo cambió como una varita mágica, pero no es así. Todo lo que no venga de unos procesos no sirven, no valen.
So the government believes that in the 6 months that they've been present, they can change the world, and in fact, they can't just change colors, they can't change it magically, that they have to go through a process.
And what would be the main things that they'd have to do to change that process?
¿Qué tendrían que hacer para cambiar ese proceso?
Bueno, primero, respetar los derechos humanos.
First
Segundo,
off, respecting human rights.
Oír, escuchar a la sociedad civil, a las organizaciones.
Second, listening to civil society and the organizations.
Y poner como comisionado del Instituto Nacional de Migración a una persona que tenga trayectoria en derechos humanos y no policías.
And putting someone at the head of the Commission for Immigration that is, in fact, knows about human rights.
We want to thank you so much for being with us. We're going to continue the conversation in post-part.